Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show. This week, I know we've had some really good special guests lately, the last few weeks, and there's more coming, but you've got so many questions to get into, so you're stuck with me and Alex today.
I hope that doesn't make people not send questions in, by the way. I don't know.
No, I'm gonna do something different. Alex, I've noticed in the comments people want to know who the hell you are. So this is your moment, my friend. Go for it.
Oh, man. I can't believe you just did that. That is not what we recorded today. I think we will save that for after the new year because we have a ton to get into today.
Oh man. Anyway, that's why, because he wants to kind of stay anonymous. In any case, you might have noticed that the recession is
giant quote fingers
is going the way of that red wave that never happened either. I want to get into that and what that means for voters. And with less than a month to go until Iowa, we've got some much more encouraging numbers for Joe Biden and one not so encouraging number for Donald Trump. Plus, we get into some of your questions, which I guess Alex is hiding behind. We've got to answer those instead of him telling you who he is. Anyway, judging by the one Alex and I have been talking about, I think people are starting to get it. Alex, where should we get started?
So I was trying to come up with a name for this first thing, and I think it's probably more confusing if I put the name on it. So here's what I want to get into. One of your tweets, and this has to do with the economic numbers, your tweet was, what recession will be just like what red wave? 3 to 6 months from now, they will be saying they knew he was right and said so all along. So Joe, explain that. And I want to maybe put it in a different kind of, don't just explain it, but what is that going to do for voter perceptions? And how long does that take?
Well, I mean, what I meant is, exactly what we're talking about, that big red wave that the press kept talking, it's coming, that the Republicans kept pushing, that we're going to have the big red wave. And it turned into a big mirage, and there was no red wave in 2022. For the last 2 years, it's been the recession, it's coming. It's going to be, it's going to be here next week. No, it's coming, a month from now, whatever. Well, it's not coming. It never was going to come. It's actually going to be a soft landing. And actually Bidenomics and the Fed are, things are changing in the economy. And you see it right now, unemployment near an all-time low. GDP, is up to 2.6%. Unemployment is now, 3. I think it's down below 3.8, but it's down there. And then you get, the core inflation is at 2.8%. That's down. The Dow's at an all-time high and moving. The S&P 500 is now up 21%, over 21% for the year. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening that, and I think John Hartwood said this, I think I was responding to his tweet or post or whatever they're calling it over in X these days, but that all the people, no one stood up to say, "Hey, we were wrong," and we've been wrong for 2 years, and driving up, negative, the negative side of everything when it turns out, and none of them are saying, "Hey, he was right," and that's not just Biden, but the Fed, Powell, all of it, and to get to what I'm really been saying now for months, every time I saw one of those polls, one of those talking heads on TV, one of the anchors do like, well, if the economy's doing so well, why is his approval number so low? And it's really simple. There is anybody who's been through presidential campaigns should know that there is a lag time of 3 to 6 months, at least, from when it really kind of turns, when you kind of see this moment, the market hitting new highs, unemployment, still holding low, core inflation going down, pretty close. It's getting damn close to the target of 2%. Yeah, it's 3, but given where it was at 9, it's really coming down. When you see that rents have posted their biggest decline in 3 years, that, inflation is way down, but wage growth is up. Again, that takes time coming out of an economic downturn with people have been like given the negative, feeling it at the gas pump, grocery prices, rents were going up, all that. It doesn't, your emotions, the voters' emotion does not turn on a dime. They've been blaming Biden for this for 2 years.
Right.
It's not like, oh, great, I woke up this morning and the market hit a high, so I'm over that. No, it takes 3 to 6 months for it to actually start having an impact on, hey, the country's going in a better direction. Hey, my own personal finances, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm worried a lot less about the economy. And, you know, I kind of like think that Biden's approval, I'm feeling better about him too. Now, proof of that, and there's lots of them throughout. Reagan, 2.5 years into his administration, his numbers were crap. Inflation had not been tamed. People did not want him to run for reelection. 12 months later, it was morning in America because, again, the lag, it had already turned, but it took 3 to 6 months for people to actually start, for their opinions to start to change and be impacted. One of the great ones was George Herbert Walker Bush. Remember Carville and Clinton, Carville, it's the economy, stupid. Well, it was. It was an economic downturn, some tough economics and numbers, and it started to turn. Unfortunately for George Herbert Walker Bush, it turned about a month or so before the election. So that whole lag thing, it happened, but it didn't happen till Clinton. It happened in the middle of Clinton's first year, and he looked like, man, he feels our pain. Well, the same happened with Obama. The downturn that happened that actually helped him get elected in 2008, and then in 2012, the Great Recession, the recovery wasn't quite there, but it was turning, and enough things turned in time that Obama was reelected. So this is something like the economists don't get this, but what's just shocking to me is how people who covered multiple presidential elections kept asking the question, why with the economy being so strong and jobs and everything, why is his approval numbers so low? I think that's gonna 3 to 6 months from now, watch. They'll all be, oh, we knew this. It's like they knew the red wave was never coming either. They all knew it was just going to be a mirage. They never touted a red wave. It's all bullshit.
I think a good indicator was, and I think Bank of America said, household savings are growing at 8.5% per year, which is a clip that people haven't seen in like 30 years.
Yeah.
Which is
I mean,
a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It is. This is a soft landing. And, soft landing means that consumers won't have to break their piggy banks. Household, I think it's from the same Bank of America quote, household liquid assets currently sit at $18 trillion. That's liquid assets. Now, look, I'm not saying that there are people still having a tough time with, because inflation still, even if it is only growing at 3% this year, that's a 3% price hike. Even though energy prices, gas prices have been going down every day now for over 70 days, I think. But it's still, that still is painful. And so, yeah, some it will take longer than that 3 to 6, may take them 9. But when you have a year left between now and the election, and you're seeing, the Fed now saying it's going to cut rates 3 times next year. Yeah, those are all really good numbers for Joe Biden, and they're horrible numbers for an entire party that's been screaming inflation. Bidenomics is killing the economy. It'll wreck it forever. Well, no, it's not going to happen, friends. And and they're going to have egg on their face. They're going to be really, really wrong, and they've walked themselves into a corner and painted themselves there. And I don't see, it when those numbers start to change, when people actually start to perceive that the economy, that they don't have to worry about a recession that they've been told was coming for 2 years, that it's not going to happen. And I'm sure Fox and the Republicans will scream the recession's happening next month for the next year. It's just going to become more and more obvious that they're full of shit.
So I think the one thing, I think most of the people that listen to this show and a lot of the questions we got, they've gotten most of what you just said. But all of these questions kind of boil down to, so what? Like, what is the Biden campaign? Because they still have to convince people to vote for him next year. What are they going to do about pointing out all those things? Because so far, yelling Bidenomics is working has not worked.
No, it wasn't. It's not going to work when people feel like when you're getting told that there's a recession tomorrow and everything's going bad, and you're seeing prices go up. It's not going. But what it does is it lays the foundation for when they turn, when they feel different. And okay, well, what caused this? Oh, well, Bidenomics. You've been hearing about it for a while. Biden will keep talking about it. Maybe not in those terms, but also taking it to where people are. You can't. Reaganomics was a disaster for the first two and a half years. I mean, Reaganomics didn't become like a re-electable thing until 6 months before the election. Before that, it was like the same thing. It was. I mean, I don't believe in Reaganomics. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying it was. It didn't matter, right? What you called it, what you called his. You can call your policies whatever you want, but if you've got, inflation at 9%, people aren't going to believe it's working until they feel that it's working. And it takes a long time for that, for one, the policies to work. And two, once they do, it takes 3 to 6 more for people to for people to actually feel it. So I think that's going to become clear. But the things like, that you're seeing, for example, the University of Michigan's index came out, and that thing had a big leap. Its consumer index jumped 13 points. People are already starting to say to the Michigan survey that, hey, yeah, this is, that doesn't happen. It doesn't move 13 points in a month. That doesn't happen. Something's going on.
But they're not associating it with Biden yet.
No, that's going to take some time. No matter, that's what I'm saying. It's, I think EJ Dionne had a good piece in the Washington Post, put it in the show notes, about a poll that was conducted last month by the Financial Times and the University of Michigan's Ross School.
Different one. Same idea.
Yeah. But, the heart of Biden's challenge, no matter how good the economic data is, voters remain disgruntled. But a poll conducted last month by the Financial Times and the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business is representative. It found that only 26% of voters thought Biden's policies had helped the economy. So that's what I'm saying. You have on one hand, the University of Michigan index jumping 13 points, meaning people have confidence, and at the same time, literally about the same time, only 26% of voters tied that to Biden's policies. That will change as we move forward. I'd much rather be Joe Biden than where the Republicans are going to be. Trying to still claim that inflation's ruined that Biden's policies have ruined the country.
Near $96 turkey.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think every listener of this podcast doesn't forget, but I think the campaign will definitely point out, there is a massive contrast here between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, Trump's now yelling about repealing the Affordable Care Act. You got MAGA,
which is in the 60s, by the way, now in terms of people liking it.
Yeah, you got, MAGA Mike Johnson, Speaker in charge of the House. MAGA's still going after abortion. You have the Texas case with she had to flee because the Texas court. I mean, we're now going to let courts decide what used to be decided by a doctor and the woman is just incredible. And Trump's openly out there saying, "Hey, um, you know, I'm not going to deny I want to be a dictator. I'd love to be a dictator for a day." And no dictator stops being dictator after they've been dictator for a day. And Donald Trump isn't going to be the first. So, I mean, it's just the contrast. And as EJ Dion pointed out in his piece, you got to take these policies of Biden's and tie them again. I mean, even things that they think they've gotten through, like focus on lowering the drug prices, on the $35 cap on insulin that he did. That as the economy's going, tie it personally, like on things like that, and don't forget about that contrast between and Trump's out there still doing like, oh, things were never so good as when I was president. That's all bullshit. I mean, it was a disaster. I mean, first of all, on spending, he massively put us deeper into debt, and the job creation was like almost zero compared to and definitely compared to Biden. I mean, Biden's light years in terms of job creation, wage growth, all that stuff. It's all going to be in a situation where look, put it this way: the one thing that's going to change, definitely going to change, is think about it. For 2 years, the big recession. It's recession. They can't stop the recession. It's the Feds putting us into recession. Biden's policies are putting us into a recession. It's going to destroy the country. Put all your money in a mattress because Bidenomics is going to put us in a recession. And for 2 years, that was the mantra. And by the way, it didn't matter what cable channel you watched because they all had their experts on talking about how this or that, or the Feds was going to do this. Biden's spending too much, whatever. Guess what? For the next year, no, that whole mantra is gone. No one's going to be out there. No self-respecting anybody who knows anything now. They're talking the opposite way. Oh, we're going to have rate cuts, 3 rate cuts next year. So that alone, that weight off of, I mean, that, and by the way, it was an insane thing. I mean, we were coming out of a pandemic. We had all kinds of supply chain issues. Biden actually was putting policies in place to keep the economy going, to make sure that there was minimal impact, and then we got the supply chain going as fast as we could, and to lower prices on drugs and other things. But they kept doing, put your hand on your wallet because Biden's gonna put us into a recession, and we're gonna, recessions means, by the way, unemployment, jobs. So none of that happened. That's what I mean. He took all those hits, the entire, like, by the way, Reagan did too. It actually reminds me that's what I'm saying. I keep going back to that cycle, but it's amazing to me in a lot of ways, the similarity of the plight of the incoming president. With Reagan, it was coming in after Carter, and just inflation was way out of control. It took 2.5 years to turn it. And it looks like about the same is actually, I think Biden turned it sooner. But it's, again, I think we'll see it more pronounced the next 3 to 6 months.
All right, Joe, continuing our collation of questions from people. By the way, one of these is from my mother, so be nice. But she keeps asking me.
It's not the stupid one, is it?
I am legally required to say no, it is not.
That was a joke, Mrs. Sashlow. That was a joke.
So give us a pulse check on what you're seeing in terms of polling. And this question is from Jack, but this is kind of what my mom was asking too. Are we looking right now at Biden's floor and Trump's ceiling?
Oh yeah, by far. I mean, that's why the third parties are such a problem, because Biden's floor is in the mid 40s comparatively, and Trump's ceiling is in the low to mid 40s. So when you look at that, that's why you see, uh, you know, you have the new Reuters Ipsos poll. In the 7 states where the election is the closest in 2020, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Biden has a 4-point lead among those who said they're sure they're going to vote. But that 4-point lead is sitting right around the 40s. They're both sitting there. You're sitting on Biden's
anywhere from like 43 to 47.
And so that's Biden's low, and you see Trump sitting there around the same kind of numbers. Varies a little bit depending on the poll, and that's his high mark. Donald Trump's not getting to 51%, folks. He can't get to 46 this time, I don't think. Biden got to 51 last time. So you look at. And I keep cautioning, though, all these polls, none of them mean anything. Not the ones that say, that he's going to be, that Biden's 11 points down in Michigan, which is, I mean, don't buy that. But you can't buy even the Biden, leading or tied in 8 polls since late November, according to 538. You have the 49-48, and the Marist poll, he's tied in the Economist YouGov 43-43, 43-42, the Morning Consult. You keep going through these. They're all 44-42, 43-42, 37-35. They are today. And the only thing you can take from them, in my view, is that Biden's like at his low point in terms of where he can get to, and Trump is at his high. Trump's not going to go higher than this. And that is, again, why the third parties are such a problem, because if there aren't any third parties, then then Biden being at his low means he's going up from here, and he's got a job to do. We've all got a job to do. We've got to make sure that people turn out, that they don't stay home because they're, and two, that we win. I'd rather be in the Biden position of having to win base voters back. In other words, if you see our decline to where we are today with Biden, it's coming from young voters that voted for him last time, minorities that voted for him last time. So he's got to win back to get. He's at his low point because people who've already voted for him in the past and voted Democratic in 2022 he's got to get them to come back. Trump has to get people who've never voted for him. And if you didn't vote for him in 2016 and you didn't vote for him in 2020, he's got to get. Now we know those people will be there; they're coming out, but he's got to get people who've never voted for him before. I think it's much more likely that people who've never voted for him before stay home than come out. If they didn't come out the first 2 times, I think so. He's not going to grow, and it's really Biden. The third parties are competing for those voters in the Biden. Been there with Biden before. Yeah, they're worried about maybe right now about the economy, his age, whatever their reasons are. But if it's a choice between Trump and Biden in the past 2 elections, in 2020 they broke to Biden. In 2022, they broke to the Democratic candidate for Congress. And I think, if there's no third parties, they break to Biden again. The third parties draw from what remains of that, from the Biden low to where he can get to he can get to 51, 52%. I think he can get a bigger margin than 2020 where he got 51. It's the third parties that are the big threat. It's not. I don't think it's Trump. I keep saying this, that I keep reminding people that I believe Trump is weaker than a lot of people out there think. That the press and the pundits have become so convinced and repeating the mantra of his supposed invincibility in the Republican Party that they're missing some signs that I still think that ceiling can go lower that he has. It's a low ceiling already.
Well,
I think it can be lower.
and this is that number that I keep coming back to that you and I were talking about before. The one big number that I think is very interesting about how tenuous Trump's support could be. I mean, and I'm curious what you think about how this could affect the primaries. But in that Reuters poll, 31% of Republicans, not everybody, Republicans, said they're not voting for Trump if he's convicted of a crime. Obviously, we've kind of shied away from the impact of all the trials that he's facing next year, but you got to believe that if he's losing that kind of support and with all the trials happening next year, that number has to be very worrisome for him.
But I think for a different reason, maybe than you think, or that a lot of people think. When you see 31% of Republicans who say that if he's convicted, they're not with him. What that says that's part of that weakness I'm talking about. Some of that 31% is totally capable of moving to a Nikki Haley or or someone else in these early states, because if they're not going to vote for him if he's convicted, it says to me that there's at least 31% who have some kind of concern about what if he's convicted, right? And so it doesn't mean that they'll actually defect now, but I think it shows it shows some of the pockets of weakness. And then when you go in and you look in Iowa and New Hampshire, where this last one, he's at 51% in Iowa, and everybody's like, wow, he's at 51%. And I think what it had DeSantis at 19 and Nikki Haley at 16. This guy is supposedly going to be able to shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and the entire Republican Party will say he must have had a good reason. Got that? I believe that's true too. However, then explain to me, how is he at 51% in Iowa and 41% in New Hampshire? I mean, there's some weaknesses that are going on. I mean, either it's like, I just don't want the chaos anymore, which I think Nikki Haley is really hitting on that. It's a great message, that just chaos surrounds him. We need, that's her case for her. I think some of those messages and the trials, I don't think he's going to be convicted between now and the election. I don't mean that I think he'll be convicted. I just think it's much likelier that somehow it'll get stalled out, and the Supreme Court will rule that make some rulings and delay things. That we can't count on that. I do think though that it shows people in the Republican Party actually are concerned about it. I mean that 31% say, "Hey, if that's it, I'm out of here." Well, if that's it, they're out of here. Then they may be thinking about getting out of here. Or do they really want to wait around for that? That's what I'm saying. So, something better comes along, something with some momentum, something, if he loses in New Hampshire with John Sununu now coming out for Nikki Haley, the governor there, very popular, particularly if she can take second in Iowa, which, it may be her problem. Maybe she can't do that. I don't know. But I just think that this whole, the invincible dude is about to be, I think it's more and more you're seeing cracks in that armor. And I think some of it's going to melt away. And, we'll see. We're 5 weeks away from Iowa. Unlike everybody else who thought, 51, that just shows how invincible it was. I think it exposed how weak he is. That somebody is going to take, and by the way, that was the whole thing. The whole way the press and everybody jumped on, it's over, look how strong he is in Iowa, is going to make whoever takes second bigger. Because we're now sure that Trump's going to win Iowa. We all know that. So just tell me who the other person is, because we're all bored with this crap. We just want to know. And when we know that, and when the press knows that, watch. And I think Sununu endorsing her may help her get some of these. Think about it. You got these 31% who aren't going to be with him if he's convicted. And you're sitting there and there's 51% in for him in Iowa. And what are those 49% thinking right now? Who are they? I mean, they're voting for somebody else. Why? Because they already are worried about Donald Trump in one way or another. And then you're trying to figure out, well, who has is it DeSantis? Who might be stronger? Because I want to, I want to make sure that, we've got a horse that can win kind of thing. And then John Sununu says, hey, I'm with Nikki Haley. And if you're in Iowa and you're starting thinking, well, maybe she can win there. I mean, there's other stuff going on. This is not like these poll numbers where everybody goes, oh, black and white, 51-19. It doesn't work that way. Not in these early states. And particularly after the early states. I mean, there can be big shifts. Once everybody who's not really paying attention in Texas right now or California, because their state's way down there. And, frankly, they haven't watched any debate and they get Trump stuff all the time. And then all of a sudden they're going to get a huge dose of somebody else. And when they get a huge dose of somebody else, that's when we'll see how weak he is. I may be overestimating how weak he is, but I think it's going to be weak enough that this is going to be that it's not going to be he'll be the nominee, but he's going to get roughed up.
Joe, I think that's a great place to wrap for today.
Are you sure you don't want to explain to people who you are just for like 3 minutes?
I think that'll wait till the new year. Give people something to listen to.
This question is sanity, folks, but he's worked for me for like 11 years. Is it longer than that?
Oh, it's close. Remember, I worked for you and then I went to Obama and then I came back. So it's closer to 15, which is a little scary.
Yeah. So this is one, on a sanity scale, you guys all, get to rate him on that. But sooner or later, we're going to start, dropping little factoids so you guys get to know who Alex really is. Thanks, everyone, for listening to That Trippy Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/trippy. Please subscribe to That Trippy Show. Leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. You can always send us a question to thattrippyshow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Resolute Square.